now also when I like look back on say certain emails, things that I'd written, it just feels super naive, super stupid at times. Like I don't think I could do those things today, knowing everything
Mhm.
that I've gone through.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. In today's episode, we have with us Mr. Vasanth Kamath, founder of SmallCase, a portfolio investing platform for retail investors. Hey Vasanth, thank you so much for joining us today and thank you so much for your time.
Hi Shreyas, thank you for having me. Very exciting to be on.
It's a pleasure having you here. I must say, I think SmallCase as a platform I've been using since quite some time, and finally having you here and talking to you about the journey of SmallCase. It's pretty exciting. So let's get right into it. Let's quickly start off with a bit of background of yourself. What did you do and all of that, and then we'll later on we'll get into the journey of SmallCase and how you got into building it. So over to you.
Sounds good. So, I'm from Mangalore.
Mm-hmm.
Born there. I was brought up in Abu Dhabi though. I
Oh.
spent the first 15 years of my life in Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
Came back to India for my 11th and 12th, or PUC as it's known in Karnataka. So
Mm-hmm.
did my 11th and 12th in Mangalore.
Oh.
Went to IIT Kharagpur then.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I did my master's in economics. And I also met my two co-founders there. One of them was my
Oh.
senior. He also was doing his master's in economics. The other one was my
Mm-hmm.
bachelor. He was doing his master's in computer science and engineering.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
After graduating, I joined this startup in Bangalore called Traction.
Mm-hmm.
Was the first employee there. Spent 2 years understanding business models, working with venture capital firms, corporate
Mm-hmm.
development teams to kind of help them identify uh, different ventures or companies in the space that they were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And after 2 years of that, started Small Case in 2015 with Anugrah and Rohan, my two co-founders.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, spent your childhood in Abu Dhabi, came back to India for your 12th, 11th, 12th, did your graduation here, and then worked with Traction. Traction is the one that essentially keeps a stock of all the startups around the world and what's happening, if I'm not wrong, right? To put it very loosely.
Yeah, it's the aim then and now, I think, is also to kind of build a Bloomberg for private companies. The whole
Mm-hmm.
idea was that at that point, this was 2013. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point, a lot of the private companies or startups data was coming online. So you could build a rich database of that, and
Mm-hmm.
that could, if it was well segmented, well uh, sli- in a sliced and diced in a nice manner, could be very
Mm-hmm.
valuable for multiple
Right.
other platforms. So it made sense to do it at a central
Definitely.
level versus everybody doing their own attempt at it.
Definitely. And I think these would be the early days of Traction that
Yeah,
time.
I was like I said, the first employee there. So
Oh,
just the
wow.
numbers, like right from kind of the idea stage to getting the first customer to getting a first set of
Amazing.
projects, the first product launch. Was
Mm-hmm.
very fortunate to see all of that.
Amazing, amazing. So, and after 2 years, you kind of left there and started building small case. So, what inspired you to build small case?
Uh, I think one was definitely, I think maybe from college itself. I don't know why. There's no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just was in the blood. Like come from a family of entrepreneurs in their own
Mm-hmm.
different ways. They started different businesses on their own. So maybe that was there. But always really wanted to set up my own enterprise. So that was one thing that kept calling to me. Even at Traction, like kind of, it was a great
Mm-hmm.
opportunity and exposure to kind of see how. New businesses were getting built. It was like 2013 to 15 was where a lot of businesses were cropping up as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the choice of sector for small case was really from the perspective that not a lot of new age brands existed in the wealth space.
Right.
And a good reason, as in the sense that for a wealth brand to really um, start blooming, it
Mm-hmm.
requires a certain time period, track record before which people start associating it with
True.
credibility, people start trusting it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we felt, a more younger, new age brand deserved to exist in the space. So those were kind of the two reasons why I really wanted to start something, and that something became small case. But
Interesting. Interesting. So let's take a step back and understand what kind of got you so interested in the retail investment space, and was that initially the market that you were looking at, or was there a pivot that kind of got you into this?
Like this was maybe after uh, getting out of traction, that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that really appealed to me was the whole financial services space.
Mm-hmm.
Within financial services, again, the choice for why capital markets or the wealth space again might have been driven by a little bit of upbringing, background, etc. Like, come from a family of people who've been investing into the stock markets, who've been practicing in the stock markets.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle used to run a sub brokerage firm. There's now an investment
Oh.
advisory house. He now runs a hedge fund as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that obviously played in a little bit to it. But financial services was broadly the space I thought was interesting from that perspective, that we needed to have a more new
Right.
age brand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Other than that, I think it's also the strengths of my co-founders. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it obviously became, it was more organic, where I was starting to talk to people saying that I want to start something in this space. That's where I spoke to Anugrah and Rohan after a long period of time. Anugrah was at Nomura. He was
Oh.
building indices, portfolios
Mm-hmm.
for education institutions. Rohan was at Goldman Sachs. He was working out of the on the US desk, where he was building trading platforms for them. So
Mm-hmm.
those skill sets also very came in very handy. But the seed of the idea was essentially what Anugrah used to do at Nomura, whether we
Oh,
can
okay.
kind of extend or translate that for individual investors, what he was doing for high net worth investors and institutions there at Nomura.
Makes sense. No, that's really interesting. And I think a lot of newer startups also in the retail space currently are trying to emulate a similar model wherein they want to bring the instruments that the HNIs invest into the retail world. And it is yet to be seen for those folks and how successful they are and how much actually the retail investor is able to identify the value that they're getting, right? Because you would see a lot of startups bring up the debt instruments like NCDs and all of that now, and give access to the retail investors to it. Although it's a great investment, but it is also really difficult to educate the retail investors about it, right? Have you faced any such challenges with small case from an awareness point of view?
So, like, what you're saying is right, and it's happening a lot more across not just the wealth industry, but across
Mm-hmm.
all domains. Purely because technology is becoming that leveler, where what
True.
you could kind of bring about as an experience using um, people or using services. Now you can kind of replicate and scale that to millions of
True.
consumers with technology. Uh,
Hmm.
Now, for us, the very lucky bit was also we started at a time where uh, participation from retail investors was very low, but the culture or the equity culture had just started kind of becoming a
True.
lot more widespread. So I think
Right.
2016 is when we launched, and from 2016 to here, like, it's been
Mm-hmm.
uh, now this will be our eighth year. But I think in these 8 years, there's been a lot of progress on that, where more investors have kind of come in themselves. A lot of them are younger people with higher risk tolerances, longer
Mm-hmm.
horizons as well, and definitely more educated uh, about how they should be looking at their personal finances. So
Right.
I think, like, that's been a big catalyst for kind of why we could build this business today. I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
some time, and it could have taken us longer, if not never, to kind of build such a platform, and
Makes
with the
sense.
concept that we kind of started.
Makes sense. And so, wow, I mean, you guys have been running this for 8.5 years now, and in the startup world, it essentially means that you are no more a startup; you are now a matured organization, right? So, in these 8 years, when was it that you kind of realized that, yeah, ye to chal pada, this is going to work, this is definitely working? When was that validation that you got?
I think it's usually the first sign of user feedback. Like,
Mm-hmm.
luckily for us, again, that's what our first partner to work with was also Zerodha, because the
Oh,
whole
wow.
concept was we needed to kind of enable our platform, which had portfolios of stocks and ETFs,
Mm-hmm.
alongside with transaction. So transactions, we needed to partner with a broker. spoke to a bunch of brokers. I think we met Nitin and Zerodha when they were also quite early in their journey.
Hmm.
I remember when we started speaking to them, they were at around 25,000 users. This was
Hmm.
2015, so early in their
Right.
journey as well. But I think from a mindset perspective, from a uh, understanding of user perspective, they really got what we were trying to build. That it was UX disruption that we were trying to do versus
True.
something fundamentally different on the product layer, etc. So I think
Hmm.
when we launched, this was July 13, 2016. Zerodha kind of said, if we really want to know how people react to this, we should just put it in front of them, which
True.
kind of is very tough for someone to do. Basically, say, here's a new product, here's something that nobody's really seen, and
Hmm.
let's introduce it to all our customer base. So, full credit to Zerodha for kind of helping us in the early days to kind of get to that the right user as well. But
Hmm.
the minute the first order really comes, that's when you know that okay, something good's happened.
Something's
Something's
clicked. Yeah.
Yeah, something's clicked. I think over the next few weeks, the feedback that you get from users, the feedback that you get from the industry, because
Hmm.
when you explain something like small case to them, um, verbally, like when you meet them, talk to them, tell them, hey, this is what you're working on, it's very tough to imagine what it could
True.
be. It made our job as a team also harder to kind of get that out there, because there's so many ways you could kind of build in, but once it's out there, then it's packaged in a certain way, and if the user and the industry kind of resonates with that, responds well to it, I think that's where you really get that feeling of saying, yeah, there's something here. Now it's our job to kind of keep unfolding and figuring out what we could do with this. But I think that was the first month, was that period where right from the first order to the bunch of emails and
Hmm.
things that we got saying that there's something here, can we extend it to this, can this happen, can you build this as a feature. So we knew that okay, people are also understanding, the are uh, responding in the same direction that we also
Hmm.
envisioned. So I think, yeah, that the first month was definitely the proof of concept for us.
Amazing. And I think that is quite rare, right? Users actually reaching out over email, giving feedbacks, कि आप ये कर सकते हो, ये करो. That essentially shows the how much I've bought into the concept and how much I've bought into the company's idea.
But
Great. So in this entire 8.5 years that you guys have been operational, what has been the most humbling moment for you as a founder?
as a founder, definitely more personal, but I think it's when other people, either
Hmm.
they're invested or vested, or maybe not vested also in your journey, but when other
Hmm.
people really go out and vouch for you for the product, for something that you built, I think there can't be anything more humbling than that, in the sense that you know uh, most founders, obviously, when they start out, everybody has to start from scratch, right? So
True.
there's always this whole period of self doubt, whether you're doing something right, etc. But
Hmm.
the confidence that you derive from someone vouching for you and saying that there's something special that's being built by
Right.
this team, I think, and it still continues today, I think those are the most
Hmm.
humbling moments that I personally experienced.
Definitely. I think there is nothing more powerful than someone else coming and vouching for you saying कि यार अब ये try करके देखो इसने जो बनाया.
Absolutely.
That is a statement in itself. Having said that, let's talk a bit about your early days of small case, right? How essentially did you kind of manage the stress of being a founder of an early stage startup? I mean, a lot of people kind of reach out to me who are essentially early stage founders saying कि यार 10 चीजें manage करनी है, I'm so overwhelmed with this that. So was it the case with you, and how did you kind of manage that?
No, I understand what founders today must, like early stage founders today, must be facing, uh, especially because like there's been an explosion in terms of content everywhere online, right? Like
Hmm.
every day you're just bombarded with content, like
True.
you should be doing this as a founder, this is what defines a good founder, this is what defines a good startup,
Hmm.
this is what you have to do 10 things you have to do if you want to build a good product. So luckily for us, as in all three of us, I think both the time in which we started, this was 2016, 2015,
Hmm.
2016, plus the space that we really started in. I think we were a little away from the noise. Like
Mm-hmm.
again, very fortunately for us, we were based in Bangalore, uh, working with the team at Zerodha. So we didn't really have to kind of be part of that noise, kind of go and
Right.
figure out what's happening, how do we fit in, etc. So those luxuries kind of helped us be very focused. Like I think it's also a lot thanks to the age that all three of us were in. We were
Mm-hmm.
uh, mid 20s, like 24, 25 we had started.
Oh,
So
wow.
at that age it's also easier to kind of be consumed by something, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
like today, like now we're past our 30s, you need
True.
to kind of sometimes get out of that zone. But at that time, when you're in that zone, that's what you're consumed by it every waking hour. It's all you're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
um, like now also, when I like look back on say certain emails, things that I'd written, it just feels super naive, super stupid at times. Like I don't think I could do those things today, knowing everything
Mm-hmm.
that I've gone through. But that's what I think, it's being in that zone that really helps you kind of do certain things, like whatever it takes to kind of get you there.
True.
So didn't really think of it so much at that point. I think uh,
Mm-hmm.
that focus, that environment, the people we were working with, the team, our investors, our partners, all of them really added to kind of that uh, comfort zone that we were in,
Mm-hmm.
where we could just be obsessed with small case. I think today it's more important to be deliberate on how to get out of it. Like we have to consciously switch off at times,
Right.
because otherwise you start getting into this tunnel vision,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't help the company. Like if you're especially trying to set the direction, if you're just thinking about it in the same way all the
True.
time, uh, it doesn't help. Beyond a certain point, you can't think more strategically for the long term. So now
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more deliberate, that we have to say, let's stop thinking about it this way. Let's understand not just different other companies, other domains, other industries, because you get a lot of analogies and inspiration from there, but also anything more abstract and creative, where somebody's created something from scratch. I think when you
Mm-hmm.
see those, then there's obviously parallels you can draw, and kind of you know understand what are the different ways that you could progress from here on. But yeah, I think luckily for us, in the start, it was easy to be completely consumed by it. Today, I think we make it a point to kind of switch off from time to time, so that we don't kind of restrict ourselves too much by
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
with tunnel vision. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Having said that, right, I have to ask you this, since you're one of the few B2C companies who has kind of scaled up well, and from what I also understand, in a very profitable, cost efficient manner. So, I mean, this is essentially like the Goldilocks zone that you say, right? Wherein you have to kind of scale up, but not so aggressively that you burn yourself out as a company, but also not so slow that you kind of stagnate and die down. So, as small case, since you have scaled up small case so well, what is it that you can give as a piece of advice to founders, B2C founders who are trying to scale up in a cost efficient manner? Like, what are the best practices and best ways?
See, honestly, Shreyas, it depends on business to business. In our business, for example, the first step for us, we realized, was to kind of take our platform to more brokers and hence their clients.
Mm-hmm.
So what we had signed up for was that getting to say 10, 12 brokers, the top ones, would take us a decade.
Hmm.
So we didn't think that we should do it fast, etc., because we didn't feel that it was even possible at that stage to kind of do it really fast. Now obviously stars aligned for us, things went well. All the brokers responded well, that we could do that in the first 4 years versus say the decade that
Mm-hmm.
we did it in. But we were kind of the mindset or the mind space that we were in was that it will take time, so we don't have
Right.
to really rush it. So that
Mm-hmm.
one, that helps. On the cost efficient manner, I think it's true for any business, but having a good community who are having great conversations about you always helps.
Mm-hmm.
Be it from say um, content that you put out, be it from your early users or your users talking well about you, be it from other businesses that are associated with you, taking your brand, your concept, your offering to, you know, their client base as well. That was
Mm-hmm.
what really worked for us, where we partnered with the ecosystem. Like today, we work with over 300 businesses, some of the largest, fastest growing brands in the Indian financial services space. But I think having that community around you, it could be generated by, or say accelerated by content that you put out. It could be your users talking about you, and you
Right.
as a builder kind of enabling those conversations to happen more frequently, in the same light that you want, or businesses that you work with kind of taking your message to more and more people. But I think
Mm-hmm.
community is definitely the cheapest way to kind of keep growing.
True. If I were to kind of summarize it, right, the first point that you said can be summed up in the sense that the B2B2C way kind of really worked out to you, right? You didn't directly go acquiring customers in that case. You went to brokers in turn, tapping into their clients, right? So you had a ready-made base with each brokers. So that really worked out well. And the second one is, as you said, organic word of mouth and building a positive community around yourself that kind of helps you improve your reach. Interesting. Let's take a step back here and kind of talk about the journey that you've had till now. What has been one of the biggest mistakes that you made as a founder, and how did you kind of recover from
I think one of the learnings, again, this is more personal versus a business learning. To be honest, it obviously helps kind of for the company, for the business
it?
as well. But I think as young, first time naive entrepreneurs, we used to attach a lot of significance or importance to what people said, or say
Hmm.
what experience or insight they used to come with, at least based on their paper experience, for example. So like a lot of, it was very easy for us to be influenced or impressionable early on. um,
Hmm.
that's something that kind of we've learned as a group. All three of us founders, I think that trust is very expensive, in the sense that we you should obviously ensure that you can trust the people that you work with, but it's not very easy to
True.
kind of it should not be easy to kind of trust anyone and everyone based on what they're saying. I think
Definitely.
kind of that is something that we've learned multiple times the
Hmm.
hard way. And now that's what I think, there's this healthy sense of pessimism, paranoia that we go with in every conversation, where we're like, okay, no, like, uh, the
Hmm.
more we interact, the more we work with other players, the more comfortable we get with it, versus saying, on day one, I understand what you're saying, I completely trust you. I think that
Right.
is something that's really helped us over the last 8 years.
Now you start taking it with a grain of salt
Grain
on
of salt,
most
grain
of
of salt,
these
but
conversations.
it also kind of puts you in that spot where you want to then uh, discover the truth, versus just depending or relying upon
Hmm.
someone to tell you what it means.
True.
So it kind of manifests itself in different ways. But I think
Hmm.
easily trusting someone is something that we've.
Definitely. Definitely makes sense. Having said that, this brings me to a question that's kind of, has been asked a lot to me by a lot of founders. How important is it for you to kind of find the right founders, and how did you kind of stumble across the group of founders that you're working with right now?
Super important. I don't think, I think, at least in my case, or say the experiences I've seen with people in my
Hmm.
network as well, I think that's maybe more than 50% of the reason something works or doesn't work. It's not just about
Hmm.
the skill sets, as in, like, earlier on, I used to think it was pretty more formulaic, where you have complementary skill sets coming together, the right set of past experiences coming together. But it's a lot more softer than that, where compatibility and trust is very, very
Hmm.
important, and that comes with
True.
obviously the time that you work together right now, but also comes from
Hmm.
relationships that you built previously. For example, say, even though it's been now 8, close to 9 years now that we started SmallCase, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been working with Anugrah since 2011, 2010, 11.
Oh,
So we were in the same
oh,
hostel,
okay.
same department. We used to organize the
Mm-hmm.
social cultural fest of the college together. So that working relationship has
Mm-hmm.
obviously been there, but each of us know when the other person is not sure about something, is not inspired by something, is not very motivated. So we can step in at the
True.
right times, and like kind of sometimes it even works like telepathy itself. So, but I think that kind of relationship is
Mm-hmm.
important between co-founders. I know, like, it's worked in other cases as well, but I would treat those as exceptions versus the norm, where two people who haven't worked with each other meet over the next 2 weeks, they form a great bond and kind of start something together, and it's worked out as well. But I would really index
Mm-hmm.
on whether there is sharing of values between you and your co-founders, motivations are similar,
Correct.
understand each other very well, you trust each other
Mm-hmm.
very highly. So if there's mutual respect or not, I think those are some of the softer things which,
Makes sense.
yeah, it's very tough to know on day one. Um, so
Definitely.
it's really worked for us, and like I still can't go back imagine doing small case with anyone except Rowan and Anugrah.
Perfect. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Given the fact that you will be spending at least the next half a decade or decade together building
But
something, as you said, right, that the telepathy, the chemistry between the founders needs to be there, and that understanding needs to be there. I think it's really an important
because it
piece.
gets a little
There's
tricky also, like I
Mhm.
think with the passage of time, right? Like earlier we
Mhm.
used to kind of be together the whole time, so communication was easier then.
Right.
Today the team's grown, there are different parts of the business or
Mhm.
responsibilities that each one of us is looking at. I think now we've set a
Mhm.
certain time every week that three of us talk to each other, but even on the other days that we don't talk to each other, like there's enough reasons for us to basically say, I don't know what that person thinks about this. Should I check with that person before
Mhm.
committing on something? So if that understanding is there between you three, that this is the broad mental model by which all three of us will operate with, makes things a lot more
Mhm.
faster, more nimble, more easier to kind of operate on a daily day-to-day basis.
Definitely. No, that makes a lot of sense. Having said that, this kind of brings me to the last question of this segment. Uh, you've been in the industry and built this for 9 years, and I think it's really scaled up well. Right, a lot of people are now investing on the platform. What would your three don'ts as an advice be to the founders who are trying to build and scale their companies?
Correct. I think like this would have been helpful for me if I truly internalized it from day one. So kind of, saying the
Mm-hmm.
same things. I don't know whether they're don'ts, do's, or maybe parts of the same message, but uh, like
Mm-hmm.
three, four things that kind of have really helped me and continue to help me every time I think about something new or about scaling up as well. Is like
Mm-hmm.
everything or everyone really starts from zero. Uh,
True.
there's this arbitrary value that we put in day-to-day life to say, okay, that person will know more than me because of this reason, but uh,
Mm-hmm.
everything is just begun from zero. So there's no reason for something not to happen because you're starting today versus somebody else has started or thinking about it or working on it
Right.
2-3 years back. The second one I think
Mm-hmm.
is like everything in this world that we see, we touch, we hear about is built and made by people. So uh,
Mm-hmm.
no reason for something to be a given truth. Um, like this is how this industry will work. This is how users will behave. This is
True.
how this has to be built. This is how another person would react. All of that, those are things that can change, very fluid. It's ultimately people. If you understand people, their psychology, their motivations, you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
discover your own path. I think the third one is again related to what I just said, but you know don't kind of look at someone else's story and try to kind of replicate that. Like each story is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like the stories we revere and read about and hear about the most are actually the outlier ones. So and replicating
True.
those usually will get into more trouble than trying to kind of stick to what you know best and how you operate. So just write your own story versus
True.
trying to kind of say, again, it's the same issue, right? Like there's so much content now versus say 10 years back versus say 20 years back, that you feel like, oh, if I'm
Right.
not doing this, maybe I'm not on the right path, etc. And it can get very
Hmm.
overwhelming from a early stage founder's perspective. So there's no
Right.
defined path. Like everybody writes their own story. You should also write your own.
Definitely. Great pieces of advice. And what I really found inspiring is I think the second point that you said, right? Uh, I think it roughly translates to something like everything around you is being built by someone almost equally as smart as you. So question everything and try to redefine and disrupt everything that you know. I
100%.
mean, because most of the time people come with a mindset कि यार ये ऐसे ही चल रहा है तो ऐसे ही चलेगा, but you can look at it at that perspective कि this can be completely changed because this was made by someone who's almost as equally as
No, no,
smart as you.
100%. That's what, like when you're an early stage founder, you are
Mhm.
by default thinking first principles. And then you will
True.
interact with a lot of people. Like, say, even I'm guilty of this at some time where I'm like, yeah, this,
Hmm.
where, people come to me and say, hey, this is how we want to do a certain thing. And
Hmm.
I think it's a function of age as well, where you're like, see, this can be done only this way. This has existed for a reason, etc. But
Right.
it's important to keep kind of questioning that and saying, it could be done in different ways as well. This
True.
was done because of what happened at that time, that place, that situation, and
Hmm.
things completely be 180-degree apart if someone
Hmm.
else at a different point in time, a different place, did something else. So I think it's just
Definitely.
really important to keep reinforcing that whenever you think about something.
Perfect. No, I think that is probably the most inspiring thing I've heard, and hopefully the audience will kind of take this to heart and disrupt all around. Having said that, this kind of brings us to the close of the first part, the founder story. Stay tuned for the next part, which is Dande Ki Baat, in which we'll essentially deep dive into the world of small case and portfolio investing for individuals to understand what's inside. Stay tuned.